Iran seems to be in the news all the time now, causing so much division in the Middle East. The Arab nations are uniting with Israel against Iran. What is Iran's view in prophecy? Where do they take place, and what are they going to be doing? I brought an expert in Bible prophecy who can help explain that. Folks, it's my great pleasure to have my friend and fellow Bible prophecy teacher, Bill Salus of Prophecy Depot Ministries. He's written quite a number of books, but particularly Nuclear Showdown in Iran. Bill's an expert on not only Bible prophecy, but particularly things in the Middle East, and he knows what's going on in the Bible as it explains what the future of Iran is. So Bill, so glad you could join us, brother. Glad you can bring your expertise and help us understand the puzzle that is Iran. If you could first explain what's going on in the Middle East now as Iran is related to, say, the Abraham Accords, and two, what is Iran's future as the Bible prophesies?
Okay, absolutely. Thanks for having me back on, Nathan. Iran is a subject of dual prophecies in the end times. Both prophecies do even say in the latter days, and one of those is Ezekiel 38. And one of those in Jeremiah chapter 49. Right now, Iran is the elephant in the room in the Middle East. It is the problem. It's one of the reasons why the UAE and Bahrain have decided to come along and normalize relationships with Israel. Of course, there's other economic aspects to their relationship, but the motivating factor really underlying it is their concerns for Iran and the nuclear aspirations that Iran's got going. Presently, Iran has several nuclear facilities. They got one real close right across the Persian Gulf, the Bushehr nuclear reactor. Russia is helping them build Bushehr number 2, Bushehr number 3. And by 2024, number 2 will be done. By 2026, number 3 will be done. This is right across the Gulf. And the Arab states over there, the Gulf Cooperative Council, which would be Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE, Qatar, Oman, and Saudi Arabia, they rely heavily on the Persian Gulf for their water purposes. And right across the Gulf, they've got these Bushehr facilities sitting on very seismic areas, tectonic plates, and they're very concerned about Iran nuclear aspirations throughout the Middle East, but also a nuclear disaster, an earthquake hitting that area, something like that to contaminate their water sources.
How close is Iran to getting a nuclear weapon?
Well, some estimates have been, because now they're enriching uranium much quicker with faster, better centrifuges. Some estimates have been in a couple of months. If they really went head over heels, they could do that. But it's hard to know because Iran is so closed off when it comes to that. But right now, because Donald Trump, when he became president back in May of 2018, roughly around that time frame, I think it was, he decided to get out of the Iran nuclear deal. So from that time forward, Iran has been moving quite rapidly to re-enrich their uranium over there.
Interesting. Do you believe that Bible prophecy prophesies that Iran will attack Israel with a nuclear weapon?
I believe Iran is a subject of a prophecy that is dealing with has nuclear implications, and that's the book that you've got on your table there. It's Nuclear Showdown in Iran, revealing the ancient prophecy of Elam. Elam, when we talk about Bible prophecy, like I said, Iran's a subject of dual prophecies. Most of your prophecy teachers today would say Iran, something in the news about Iran, they point their fingers toward Ezekiel 38 verse 5, where Persia is listed in a coalition of 9 members total with Russia and Turkey. They come to invade Israel for plunder and booty, etc. But I say no, not so fast, because I believe another prophecy happens that precedes that, and that's dealing with Elam, the ancient prophecy of Elam. Now Elam, and when you look at a modern day map of Iran, you have Persia, which is about 2/3 of Iran, and ancient Elam, which hugs the Persian Gulf, where those reactors are, the Bushehr reactors I was telling you about. And they've always been geographically isolated by the Zagros mountain range, but they still exist in the prophecies when Jeremiah wrote, which is around 596 BC. He actually wrote his prophecy before Ezekiel wrote his by about 20 years. And he talks about, I'm just going to take a second because I know the program's short. This prophecy is summed up in 6 verses. It talks about there's going to come a time, Nathan, where the Lord is going to be fiercely angry with the leadership of Iran. And as a result, he's going to bring about a disaster. We know this, and I think this timing is now because the the mullahs and Khomeini and everybody, they want to wipe Israel off the map and about to have the nuclear weapons to do that. But it says he's going to destroy from there the kings and the princes because they want to launch something lethal somewhere. He's going to break the bow at the foremost of their might. But then it says when the disaster happens, Nathan, this is why I think it could be nuclear. And I can get into the whole story in the book I do about what's a bow, where's the foremost of their might, probably really referring to the nuclear scenario, etc. But it says when this happens, he'll bring the four winds from the four quarters of heaven and scatter the exiles, the Elamites, the Iranians, toward all those winds, toward all the nations. It says there'll be no nations, plural, where the outcasts of Elam don't go. So it creates a humanitarian crisis. Whatever this disaster is, it appears to create a humanitarian crisis. And it goes on to say that when this happens, Iran will be dismayed before their enemies, plural, a menu of enemies. Right now you've got Israel, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, so you got America's an enemy, etc. So we have all the conditions are there. It says he'll pursue them with the sword until he's consumed them. That tends to be a military situation. And then there's good news at the end, which is really a thing that's going on in Iran, is he said, I will set my throne in Elam, and I will bring back the captives and restore their fortunes in Elam. And that's got a lot of Iranians. That's a backstory here. A lot of Iranians are excited about this Bible prophecy because he's going to set his throne in Elam and bring back captives after this disaster. Iran is the fastest growing evangelical population in the world right now. They're having dreams, visions, miracles, and healings. And their thousands are coming to the Lord almost daily, and Iran converting out of Islam. It's an incredible story.
That is. Well, folks, God has a purpose for those who seem to be against his people. People are getting saved in Iran. Pray for the people of Iran and pray for the peace of Israel, because we know there will be no peace until the Prince of Peace comes.